but then you've got all, you kind of do it that way, but then you have all these changes that are snuck in or done between censuses, and that's where the problem occurs. And so we want to close that loophole, right? So here is the amendment. Here's what we've got. SR 558 and HR 1033. It's a two-part amendment. Part one, this is the language that would result in the Constitution if we get this changed. It says Part A, the General Assembly shall apportion Senate, House, and Congressional. That's fine. Part B says that the apportionment should be done in the first odd numbered year after the census, right where it belongs, 2021, 2031, 2041. That's so part B is where we restrict the changes to only the year after the census. And then part C says, well, if a court orders you to make a change, the change shall be limited to those changes necessary to correct the deficiencies found in the court order. That prevents bundling unnecessary changes in with the maps. This is exactly what happened in 2023. And we'll maybe talk about that one again, but it's in the history file. So this is what the amendment says exactly. So this is exactly how we want it to work, and that's what the amendment is. That's what this amendment says. There's a part two of the amendment, which I'm not going to show you, but it's in your handout. Part two says, here's the language that will go on the ballot if this goes through, because it's a constitutional amendment, it has to go through the legislature and then go on the ballot in November, right? And so the amendment as proposed has this language and then a simple sentence around how it will appear on your ballot if you're going to vote on it. And that's in your handout. I'm not going to cover that here, but it basically says, shall the Constitution be amended so as to enact this thing, right? So this is the actual thing that we have going on. And your handout has this, it actually has it in markup form where it shows the deletions and additions, but the net result is this is how it would work, which is exactly what we want. Current status of these two things. So SR 558 has been introduced and it has been referred to the Senate Reapportionment and Redistricting Committee. It has 17 sponsors. Senator Elena Parent, our longtime champion of redistricting in the Senate, is the sponsor. 16 others, all Democrats, have now signed on. H.R. 1033 was just recently introduced. I say referred to because as of this morning, it had not yet been referred. We believe it's going to land in the House version of the Senate Committee, the Reapportionment Redistricting. Don't know if that's true as of 7 o'clock tonight. I didn't look until about noon. But again, Representative Syra Draper is our champion on the House side, who's a longtime advocate for fair elections and has been involved with election issues in Georgia, plus five others, again, all Democrats so far. So that's where it stands. Good news is we've got something we can talk about, and we've got something live out there. Okay. Now, how does a constitutional amendment get enacted? Okay. First of all, the committees to which the resolution is assigned have to hold a hearing on the resolution. Then they debate and they vote, whether to send it to the floor and recommend that it be adopted, or the committee could say, we're not going to vote it out of committee. Those committee hearings, there will be opportunities for us to go provide public testimony. That certainly should be true. And we would plan to be there, and anybody who wants to join us for that, if we get to the hearing stage, another opportunity to speak about why this is important. It then goes to the Rules Committee, another committee that has a say. And the Rules Committee can decide whether this goes to the floor or not. We would hope they would say yes, but they also set the rules for the debate, like how long it would take and so on. So the Rules Committee gets a say. Then it goes to the floor in each chamber. It would require a two-thirds majority vote in the chamber because of the constitutional amendment to get through. Both chambers have to agree. After that point, it goes directly to the November ballot and requires simple majority vote on the November ballot. It does not go to the governor for signature. Constitutional amendments go directly to the voters. So it's an uphill climb. Don't get me wrong. It's an uphill climb, but we think that this is a bipartisan solution to a bipartisan problem, and we're hoping we can convince legislators to take first step is to get the committee hearings, and that's why we want people to sign on to the bill. Okay. So in terms of approaching the discussion here, we want to talk about why we need it. This is a real problem. We have a 20-year history of many, many mid-decade changes. We think it's a bipartisan problem because both parties have been involved in these mid-decade changes. They both do it, and it's always the same reason. It's always for partisan gain. So a bipartisan problem should have a bipartisan solution. It makes, as a legislator, it makes their job easier because they don't have to run in a new district because somebody wanted to change it, right? And so we think it avoids disruption. We think it's a value to legislators to do it this way. And we think, frankly, the loopholes should just be closed. And again, our pitch is that Georgia can show leadership. Georgia can show leadership. So when you're having the discussion, use your handouts. Now that's I showed you the first one. I'll show you the second one in a moment. But keep in mind that in your conversation, we are a nonpartisan organization. We don't want to lead this conversation by saying, well, guess what? You know, Trump told Texas to start redistricting. So California said, we're going to fight back. We don't want to get into the tit for tat, party A did to party B. Our view is that all these states who are doing this are wrong and that we should stop the practice and Georgia should lead. Okay. So the secondary handout that we have for you is one you may have seen before. I call it the history handout. And this is a two-pager as well. On the left-hand side or the front page is the history. All those 70 changes are all documented there, when they happened, why they happened, and you can read those and you can refer to those. You'll be able to give this handout to your legislator, okay, or just refer to it yourself. But this is all, again, information that can be handed out to a legislator. Again, so it's got the history. It repeats the comments about why is it harmful. It's got one of the maps on there about Georgia being an outlier. And then again, it loosely talks about the amendment. So this is kind of like the history handout. It's just got backup information for you. You'll have both of these. We will be sending both of these to you or providing it if you come and are with us at Day at the Capitol. Okay. Um, I now want to go through some objections that you might hear. And then at the close of the objections, we're going to stop and pause for questions. So what kind of reactions might you get? And know that, you know, on the committees, the committee membership is one-sided. I think the committees are typically like 10 Republicans to 5 Democrats. I mean, the committees are stacked, okay? So we realize that, you know, the Republicans want to control this. So your conversations are going to be with both parties. And frankly, Republicans are going to be harder to convince than Democrats here, right? So the number one rejection that I think you might hear is, well, look, this is a bill by Democrats for Democrats. These are all Democratic sponsors. It's obviously you're trying to do something in favor of Democrats. The answer is no. It's a bipartisan problem. Both parties have proposed and supported these trades. We need to prevent future manipulation. And we have polling, we've done polling across the state about what voters think about redistricting. 78% of them want us to have competitive elections, and 58% of them support us actually changing the law to make the system fairer. So we think our polling is pretty compelling that says this is not just, you know, us from Fair District saying this. We are speaking on behalf of 5 million Georgians, 5 million Georgia voters when we say these things, okay? And the other thing about this change is that neither party gains an advantage from this change. It just levels the playing field. So it's not a bill by Democrats for Democrats. It is not. Okay. Another objection. Well, we have no plans to redraw the maps in Georgia. Our leadership has already told us we're not going to do it. Well, that's good to hear, but that may be temporary. The opportunity and temptation will still be there. There are circumstances could be changed. There are court cases that are pending that might open the door to an opportunity. And so before 2030, the circumstances could change. And this is a permanent improvement. This isn't a short term just until 2031. This is a permanent improvement that would last forever in Georgia. It's a big deal. And frankly, the loopholes should be closed. Even if you don't have any plans to draw them today, let's just make sure that nobody starts this nonsense again in the future. That's why we closed the loopholes. Here's another objection. Well, I'll have to check with leadership about this. This is not an uncommon thing. Many legislators who sit on the committees, they're rank and file members, right? They're going to say, well, I haven't heard about this. It's not on the leadership's agenda for right now. I got to check with them about this. Well, fair enough. But if they raise this objection, my view is let's try to understand their personal take on it. What's your personal opinion? Now that you've heard about this, well, first of all, have you ever experienced map changes since being elected in 2021 or 2022, right? Have you experienced this problem or in the past? What's your view on it? Do you agree it's a problem? Would you support it on the merits? Regardless of what leadership says, what do you think? This may be hard to get them to render an opinion because they tend to want to toe the party line very closely, okay? But at the end of the day, you want to try to get their personal opinion on this. Now, another weird objection they might raise is, look, House members, not true in the Senate, House members are only allowed 10 bills per session. The answer is, yeah, but that's for bills you introduce. We're asking you to sign on. This doesn't count against your quota, so don't worry about that. You may not hear that objection, but if they do raise that objection and you say this, they know you know what you're talking about, okay? Objection, this is a low priority issue. No one's worried about this except you people. Look, here's what I would say to that. Look, what we're all about here is free, fair, and secure elections. That's what everybody wants. And free and fair elections are a two-sided coin. There's the fair conduct of the elections, and then there's fair maps. You can have the fairest conduct of an election, but if the map is rigged, what are you voting on? And so fair maps are as essential as anything you're involved with voting rights kind of issues. And guess what? The Assembly this year again is already considering bills about voting rights and voting procedures and conduct of elections. They just finished a big study committee about it. There's going to be legislation involved. So if you can talk about that, you should talk about the other side of the coin. Fair maps deserve equal time. And again, repeat this comment about voters want this stuff fixed. 58% of voters think this is a problem. It should be fixed, right? And if you look, and there are nationwide polls in addition that show that voters are rebelling against map rigging and they're going to start prioritizing democracy issues in this election. So that's a warning sign that, or maybe it's an opportunity sign that says if you stand up and say, we're going to ban mid-decade, you'll be able to tell voters you took a stand against what's going on in the rest of the country and try to make Georgia a fairer place to vote. Well, here's another objection. We change districts every 10 years anyway, so what's the issue? Look, voters are expecting the decennial changes, but not the repeated changes. It takes time to get to know your voters. We know how, and we know how hard it is to campaign. Some of us have done that, right? And so repeated changes disrupt that relationship. So we think that you want stability, and so do voters. Therefore, yeah, we know it's going to happen every 10 years. Every district gets changed a little bit or some, fine, but repeated changes disrupt the relationship. Here's another objection. Oh, this is a problem in other states. This is California and Texas and all those other states, right? It's not a problem in Georgia. Well, yes, it is. Hold on, hold the phone here, right? Look, first of all, we fair districts take a stand that the map rigging in any state, regardless of which party is winning, is absolutely wrong. We don't like what California is doing. We don't like what Texas and Indiana was attempting in Missouri. Forget all those states. This is about Georgia. This is about Georgia saying we're going to be different. We're going to be better. So we object to all map rigging, no matter which party is doing it. And of course, this redistricting war is in the news right now, all these other 8 states. But you know what? Georgia has been quietly doing this for 20 years. It's time to stop it. And we are clearly an outlier. If you look at our procedures for state legislative, especially redistricting for state house and state senate, we're one of only 3 states where, even though redistricting follows the census, we allow unlimited changes. We're an outlier there, right? With Congress, a lot of states are in the same boat, like Georgia, but we are clearly an outlier when it comes to this practice. That's why, forget the other states, Georgia should show leadership and ban the practice. I think this is the last objection, then we'll take questions. All of our redistricting changes abide by the law. Look, yeah, these mid-decade changes have all been made legal because of those loopholes, but they are always done for partisan gain. Every single time, every single one of the 71 changes was done because somebody wanted to make a district easier to win for one party or the other. That's all that's going on here. That's it. Now, in 2023, there was a different situation arose, right? In 2023, maps were drawn because of the court orders to add districts for black voters. Those were valid court orders. But when those maps were drawn, they included extra changes just to even the score. The people drawing the maps said, well, if I give more districts to black voters, I'm probably going to lose those seats. I better even the score. So in that bunch of 71 changes were a bunch that were done, probably I think it was about 10, just to even the score. So again, was it legal? Yes, it was not required by the court order, but it was legal. They may be legal, but they're not what voters want. And as we say, partisan gerrymandering, this stuff may be perfectly legal, it's also perfectly wrong. So this change stops in its tracks these mid-decade changes. We'll deal with how to draw fair maps in general at another time. Right now, this is about stopping all the mid-decade stuff. Okay, I'm going to stop there and take questions about everything I've said about the ban, the objections, the conversations. I'm going to stop there and pause for questions before we move on. And we'll either take them from the chat or you can raise your hand. And Beth, you'll orchestrate here. Is Beth with us? Did we lose Beth Stevenson?
No, you have me. I was muted.
Oh, okay.
Okay. I'm looking for anybody with questions.
There's some in the chat.
Yes.
Right.
Let's see.
Beth, do you want to watch for hands raised and I will just read the chat and see what I can find?
That sounds great.
I'll do that. I'll do that. Okay. Um, okay. Where are the handouts? The handouts are going to be mailed to you. We'll talk about that in just a minute. Again, if you filled out the survey, we're going to use the survey that Michael posted is how we're going to collect your emails. So we know who you are and we know what role you want to play based on the survey, and we will get the handouts to you either there or when we get to the day at the Capitol. If you join us there, we will give them to you there.
Survey is the last thing sent in the chat, so just click on that couple of minutes.
Great. Do we know of any Republican legislators who are willing to or leaning towards signing on to the bills yet? I don't think so, Leslie. They're very new. We've had conversations with legislators in just like in the last year or two talking about this problem. I would say many of them are surprised when we talk about the extent of the mid-decade stuff. They want to learn more. We have yet to ask a Republican, as far as I know, would you be willing to sign on to this bill? That starts now. In fact, I have my first meeting on Friday with a state senator down in Villarica. And so I would say we don't know yet, but I think because we're trying to portray this as a problem that both parties have created and a common sense solution that levels the playing field, we're hopeful that we can get some traction on that. Joyce, is there an available list of legislators who have dealt with this directly, Republican or Democrat? Joyce, when you say have dealt with this directly, can you clarify what you
Yeah,
mean?
so I'm wondering if there are current legislators who were impacted, their districts changed, and they had to fight to either win or they lost. I mean, even if somebody's not in the legislature, that we could approach because they were directly impacted by that change. So they have, some whatever that thing about being in the game, you
Yeah,
know.
yep. Great. That's really a great question. And I would say the answer is absolutely yes. We know some. Senator Parent as an example of one, right? Um, we're actually going to go do a little bit of research on this. I'm going to ask, I think John Stevenson's with us tonight. I'm not sure if he's or not. But we have the data that shows who was impacted by the 2023 change, the excess changes in 2023. We're going to try to extract that list. And so we know who was it whose districts were changed in 2023, I'll say against, I'm going to say against their wishes, but let's just say unnecessarily, right? Because there were maps proposed in 23 that did not have those kinds of changes, and those are voted down. So we're going to try to extract that list and maybe use them as targets. So what a wonderful, insightful question. You win the star for the evening for that.
We know
Okay.
of I mean, we do know of a couple. Marjorie Taylor Greene was very unhappy with her, even though was still in a winning district. But she was, they really, if you look at her map, they went on, they took a whole population of people who were lined up. If you remember, Ken, a lot of people from Powder Springs came
Oh, right.
to oppose the change because they were being put into a person's district who was clearly never going to listen to them in their mind, and that's what they argued, did not prevail. I think, our good friend Becky Evans was, did I mean, it happened. There are, we know of some examples, but I don't think a full list. So it'd be great to.
And by the way, you raise a good question. Lucy McBath, her congressional district was bounced around and she had to go from the 6th to the 7th back to the 6th. And Carolyn Bordeaux, who was in the 7th, was basically paired with Lucy in that district and was not able to continue. So yes, there is a list. So Joyce, we're going to get a list of current legislators. We can try to get this, so we know who is currently sitting now that we're going to go talk to might have some interest in, we can raise their awareness of the impact on them and maybe get them to indicate an interest.
Along those lines, do we also want to contact voters who were impacted by it? Get letters to the editor or what have you. So it's not just the legislator, it's the voters who are saying to their legislators, we want this to change directly. So it's just a thought.
Yeah, that's a good thought, and I would say that there may be people here in the meeting tonight. One of the questions that we're going to ask you is what your district number is in another email that you're going to get, and if you were in one of those affected districts, that may give you a further incentive here. So that's a great one. Let me move on to Nancy Wiley's question. Um, I've heard a reason to redistrict is because of the redistricting following the census. The district has a few voters on the opposite side of a river or a mountain, so the representative have trouble getting there. They want those people out of their district and others to put in replacement. Would this be allowed under the proposed amendment? So, Nancy, interesting question. I would say that you would want the district to be drawn at census time correctly so that those physical boundaries were taken into account, right? Um, this would, if that district wasn't drawn correctly and somebody decided, let's say halfway through the decade, to say, look, take these people on the other side of the river and give them to somebody else and give me somebody else, this ban would not allow that change to happen. But the point is that this kind of a thing should easily be taken into account when the map is drawn originally, so that the map correctly represents a natural geographic boundary. Okay. Um, Nothing else in the chat. Anybody have any question they want to raise? Has any hand been raised, Beth, that you see? I guess not.
I
Okay.
have a question. I don't know how
Oh,
to raise my hand.
okay.
So one argument I've heard in the past, and I've used in the past, is that we're in a state that's likely to flip Democrat at any point, and it would, especially if I'm talking to a Republican, it would be a good time to get this change in to minimize their risk later. But I do not hear you saying that this time around, and I do know we're a nonpartisan organization. So can you just clarify, are we steering away from that kind of argument?
Well, I think it is a valid argument, but it does kind of lean into a partisan conversation. But I would say that, maybe the thought here is that, you can't really predict who's going to be in charge after each election. You don't know how it's going to go. So both parties should be interested in making the process fair so that as we go forward, it doesn't matter if your party is no longer in charge or it's a split legislature or the governor changes or whatever, that you want the process to be fair so that no matter who's in charge, that's how I would portray it, right? Rather than saying, well, you're about to lose, the Democrats are going to take over next year, so you better be ready for this. I wouldn't go that way. But clearly we think that tipping point is certainly possible. Georgia's a swing state, let's be clear, right? And so things could happen over the next few election cycles, and you would want to have a fair process installed so that your interest is protected. Okay. I think there's one other comment in the chat from Navia. Yeah, okay, Navia, thank you for that comment. Navia says she's a voter, has been affected because she was in District 7 and saw your representation change from Macbeth to McCormick. Yeah, District 7 was one of the partisan takebacks that was executed when they built the new District 6 for Black voters, and Lucy ran in that district. Um, then 7 was left open. It was a nice minority coalition district with Blacks and Hispanics and Asian folks and white folks, and they really re-swizzled it into a very heavily majority white district. The minority coalition was really broken up, and so it became a very friendly district for a guy like McCormick. So anyway, okay. Michael Beach, do you have a question? You're raising your hand? Okay, you're just gesturing and it's catching. Okay. All right, let me go back. So now we're going to turn the meeting over to Julie Edelson, who's going to talk about um, lobbying protocol and logistics. Go ahead, Julie.
Okay, so just quickly on the context that we're in, that's the second of a 2-year session, meaning that bills carry over from last year and new bills continue to come in. So there's quite a flow of legislation right now. This year's session, 40 days, not consecutive. And which means they can stop and start the clock, which is why it gets all the way to why we end up going into early April before, even though that's many more than 40 days from when the session starts. Most of the legislators on the committees, the redistricting committees in each of the chambers, they're already familiar with Fair Districts Georgia, so you can feel confident about that. Because Fair Districts has been active for several years and was a really strong and respected voice during the reapportionment and redistricting following the 2020 census. So you sort of know you're going in with that behind you, which is nice. Just to get started, if you not familiar with the General Assembly's website, I've got it on this slide. It's www.legis.georgiaga.gov, and it's a really great resource. You can find current legislation with sponsors and what the status is of the legislation. When you open the web page, there's a calendar that pops up that shows you what's happening that day and maybe for the next couple of days in terms of the floor sessions and committee meetings. It has all the members of the General Assembly with the basic information about their district and where they're located, where their address is, what their party is, committee assignments, what they've sponsored, all very helpful information. And committee member lists, so you can look and see who's on the redistricting committees and the rules committee, which would probably be the other one at some point we'll be concerned about, hopefully, because that will mean our bill got through the substantive committee. And then you can find your own representative and senator, if you don't know already, by going to my voter page on Georgia, which, by the way, while you're there, it's always great to check to make sure your voter registration is reflected properly so that you don't have any trouble once we get into this big election season. So just a little plug for that. Next, thank you. So meetings with legislators. So for in-person meetings, what we're focusing on is the first one tonight, meetings by appointment, so that you would arrange in advance, which allow for obviously longer uninterrupted discussion. We do, because it's a busy session, busy time of year for legislators, you have to be patient. It could be you may have to wait a while, even if they say 2 o'clock, they may have a committee meeting that's going over, or the floor session lasted longer, whatever it is. And it may even be canceled if their schedule just gets out of control. So just be aware that that's a possibility. You just call their Capitol office and ask whoever answers the phone who can help you arrange an appointment. And it shouldn't be very difficult at all. The other in-person lobbying is what they say at the ropes or on the rope line. We're not going to focus too much on that tonight, but it's just another way to see people in person. There's a protocol for sending in notes to legislators asking them to come out. When on lobby day, we'll go over this more specifically. But the benefit to this is that it allows you can call out several during a couple an hour period or whatever, and so you can cover more people, but they're shorter conversations. They may be interrupted. They may have to go in for a vote, so it's not always as productive. But it's a good way to meet somebody if you haven't been able to meet them otherwise. Okay, next slide, please, Ken. Thanks. So this is just a little bit about what you're getting into. That there's as I said, there's lots of bills from last year and this year. They have hundreds of bills that cross their desk. They have constituent responsibilities. There are multiple committees and which meet at most of them have regular schedules, but if they're on a busy committee, they may end later. The later the session goes, the more meetings they may have. And so they have a lot of responsibility with that. And then there are a lot of lobbyists trying to meet with them, and some of the business ones who maybe have more sway at times than folk like us, unfortunately. But that's the case. So you want to be efficient when you do get to have a meeting. Ken went over how the messaging, the substance of the messaging, but you want to be pretty concise. You want to reference our data, but not get caught up in the weeds, because you'll lose them. You'll see their eyes glaze over, and you won't get through what you want to say to them. You want to personalize the issue, if at all possible. If there's a reason why you're drawn to the work with fair districts, and that's kind of what you want to talk about, is whether it's specific. This happened in my district. I spent months not knowing who my legislator was, because it was up in the air, and I didn't have any voice in what was going on. There's that, but there's also, in the global sense, what it does to the way our elections are conducted, and that it ends up with legislators getting to choose who they represent rather than the other way around. And you want to make sure you ask for what you want, which is support. And it depending on the person, it might be, if they're very much with us, then you want to ask them to sign. You want them to sign on to the bill. If they're very iffy, then you just want to move them more toward, to support, getting their support, saying that they will support it. Sometimes they'll say, well, if it gets to, if it gets to the committee, I'll be happy to hear it. Or if it, they'll give you different answers. So you want to just try to push them to the next level. They'll look at it. They will support, if they support it, leaving the committee, they will support having a hearing. If they're okay with that, then the next thing, voted out of the committee. So you want to try to push them toward a more substantive support, wherever they are. You want to meet them where they are. And then you want to make sure you listen. I mean, that's probably the most important. You want to have to say your piece, but listening to so you can what are their sticking points? What are they concerned about? What could we either say at the moment or follow up with to respond to their concerns or their hesitations? So listening is very important too. So here's just a few tips. And this is important, and because if you're planning in advance for a meeting, you have some time to do this. You want to be familiar with our issue, but you also want to know who you're going to be dealing with. So obviously you want to know what party they are, because while we're nonpartisan, they are not, and that plays into a lot of how they approach their work. You want learn a little, what's their district? Is it rural or urban makes a difference? Do you read their bio? Each one, almost all of them have bios, and you can just say, and it'll say what their career is, what their education, what other organizations they support. So you want to, this will all help you see where their perspective might be. And if you have any connections at all, that if they went to a school that you either went to, or someone who went, a relative, whatever, if they live in it, you have a relative in the district, whatever it is, anything that you can sort of break the ice a little bit, and so they can see you have something in common, and you're coming, you're a voice they'll warm to. Let's see what, you can, have if they're new, you want, if they're relatively new, first or second term, how do you like it? Is it what you expected? Just some kind of human interaction. So, as you're getting started. And then look to see what other kinds of legislation they have signed on to. If they've signed on to repressive voting legislation, then you're going to have a different conversation than if they've supported something that is more in line with the kinds of things we're looking at. And then, of course, you want to know if they have a leadership position on another committee or within the caucus. That just gives you an idea of where they are in the hierarchy a little bit. And of course, if they're on the reapportionment and redistricting committee, then they're going to know a lot more than people who aren't, and that conversation is a little bit different. And then, of course, if they've signed on already, if they're, right now we're talking about just Democrats, but if they've signed on, you really do not forget to thank them. It really means a lot to them when they know that people appreciate what they're doing. Okay, and then a little bit more about when you're in the meeting. Be respectful, even if they're not, meaning sometimes they're not. They may cut you off. They may, just be looking around, I mean, whatever it is, you want to be patient. And you don't want to give them an excuse to tune you out. So just, go do the best you can to continue a conversation where you can share what the points you want to make and hear what they have to say. Always address them with their title of senator or representative. If you know that they're a chair of a committee, you may want to say Mr. Chairman or Madam Chair, but you can always go with senator or representative. They do appreciate that. And of course, they're most responsive to their own constituents, and you're going to be meeting often with people who aren't your legislators because they're the reapportionment, there's not that many on that committee, and they're often from rural or far-flung areas so they won't be your representative. But you want to, if that comes up at all about why you want to see them, well, their role on this committee is important to every Georgia voter. And so this is, again, going back to why this is important to you. You want to share handouts, and if there's an aide sitting with them, make sure that you give them a copy as well. So sometimes they're the ones that's actually going to read it. And summarize it to their boss. So you want to make sure to include them and talk with them too. Look at them, talk to them, make them feel part of the conversation. And then this is pretty important. I've gotten into trouble with this before. If they ask a question you can't answer, don't try. You're better off. And first of all, it's a great opportunity to go back to to see them again. Either see them again or write them again. Whatever. And if you say something that's not quite right, that is always going to come back to bite you. So better say you don't know. You're a volunteer person who cares about this issue. You're not claiming to be a reapportionment and redistricting expert, but again, it's a good opportunity. And so be sure to put it in the reports that you're going to hear about from the next speaker, so that somebody gets back to that legislator. And I think that's it. I think that's it for me, but I'm not very good at looking at the chat while I'm speaking. So do we want to stop for questions, or
We're
do
going
we
to
want
pause. Yep. Let's
Okay.
pause for questions. And I'm just going to tack on one thing while we're looking for questions, which is, Julia, those are excellent tips. And I think that, the way you think about this is you're trying to start a relationship with somebody you don't know, right? So there's a natural human interaction there. I think you're going to know pretty quickly whether the legislator is genuinely interested or whether they're kind of giving you okay, go on. And then they're going to give you the brush off. Like, oh, I'll take a look at it later. I think to your point, Julie, you want to follow up. If they say, well, I'll look at it and let you know, or I'll just look at it, you want to call them back and say, hey, we met a week ago, or you go back down or whatever. Try to follow up. Let them know you're not giving up, right? You want to know their answer. You want to get a definite answer, yes or no, at some point from everyone on the committee, so we know where we stand with them, right? And I think the more you are persistent about it, I think that's good. Now, let me just make a comment. I know we're going to run a little over tonight. I would ask your indulgence to stay on as we finish the last piece here. But Julie, those are great tips, and I think you'll just, hopefully as you meet these legislators, you'll know. I think generally they're approachable. They're not like don't bother me kind of thing. But they will let you know, their body language and their sort of reaction will let you know whether they're like, yes, thank you for that information. I got to go to another meeting versus they're genuinely thinking about it, right? And so we want to try to warm them up, so that we get a positive answer, at least any answer. And then, and like to your point, I love the point about if they have an objection, we'll have a company, we'll have somebody come and help you. And I'll just say that I will make myself personally available to support as many of your meetings as I can. I can't be there every single day, but if a bunch of you folks are scheduling meetings and there's a couple of days, uh, I'm happy to be your backup subject matter expert, or some other folks on our team will do that as well. Did any questions come in? Let's see. Oh, first one. Is it hard? If it's hard to get an appointment, should you meet with staff only?
That's a really difficult question because a lot of them, their staff are like, college students who who are really, and I don't mean to say this disparagingly. I mean that they're really more there to help with the, to keep them on their schedule and to handle paper for them and sort of, they don't necessarily they're there for just the session. They don't necessarily have the confidence of the legislator the way you would want when you normally think of meeting like with congressional staff or something.
Right.
Now others do have people who are very very seasoned. They call it chiefs of staff. They call them often now, or just legislative aides. So it's kind of hard to say. I wish I could answer that more definitively. It would be, I would just say to, keep trying with the legislator. If you're going to be at the Capitol anyway, then I would go, then sure, meet with the staff. But I think then I would try to get that person to come out from on the rope line, which, and find another way to see them.
Right. I'll say I've seen chief of staffs more on the Senate side. Some of them have senior staff people that might be worthwhile, but I think you're right. You want to get to the decision maker, really.
I think so. Yeah, I think some of the leadership in the House and Senate, have very good staff and who may be helpful and more open-minded and might be helpful, but it's such a case-by-case basis that I don't really want to, I don't really have a great way to answer that. I'm sorry.
Okay. Last question, Greg Davis. Can we share the PowerPoint with other organizations? Of course. Charge them $5 a copy and donate it to our coffers. But yes, of course you can share it. Okay. Are there any other questions? I guess not here. We're going to turn the program now over to Joyce, who is going to walk us through quickly the how we're going to organize all this. So now that you're all ready to go, or now what do you do next? So let me get that slide back up, and I think I'm going to do the first slide for you, Joyce, right? Yeah. So how are we going to organize all this, right? So hopefully you've all filled out the survey, and Michael Beach now knows whether you are willing to meet with legislators or whatever your role is going to be. Assuming that we're going to talk right now about organizing with legislators, Joyce is going to send you an email. Joyce, are you going to do the Black Caucus email one for that? Is that right? Well, you're going to show the email address in a minute. But
Yeah.
Joyce is going to send you, we're going to send you some emails tonight. You'll get the handouts. You'll get the PowerPoint from here. Joyce is going to send an email requesting information, another survey, asking you about your district number, some other things. You'll see that. We're then going to assign you to two-person teams. We'll be teaming you up. If you have a preference, let us know on the form. We'll then let you know which committee members are your targets, but also you visit your representatives and senators. That's on you, and that's why we're asking to know who your numbers are. We'll send you that information. If you decide to set meetings before our day at the Capitol, please print copies of your handouts and just go start. Have the meetings. I mean, if you feel comfortable, go. Don't wait for us to have lobby day. If you want to choose to try to meet on the day at the Capitol, we will bring extra copies. We'll probably be handing these out anyway. But again, don't wait for the day at the Capitol if you can start sending meetings. I think getting meetings on a particular day is very hard. I've been trying to get a meeting with the committee chair on the House side for a while, and I got stalled last session, and I'm working on it right now to try to go see him personally about this, and I haven't yet heard back. And so going to be very hard to say, well, it's got to be this day. So I would say you're all going to be off and running as soon as we give you your assignments in terms of which committee members we'd like you to target. And just start, go have meetings, just go. So Joyce is now going to talk about what you're going to get, what are we going to be asking you. So Joyce's floor is yours.
Hey, here I go. Okay, so you've gotten background from Ken, you've gotten background from Julie, and I'm going to offer you a brief overview. I'm going to try to zip through it because we are over time, of how you're going to keep a record of how we're going to keep a record of your outreach efforts. You guys are going to be, as volunteers, are going to be doing so much of the heavy lifting, so we want to make the reporting as easy as possible. If when you're doing the reporting to us, you find that you can think of a better way to do it, then please just send me an email or give me a phone call, and we will try to adjust the process. You can go to the next slide, please. Actually, you can pass over this slide also. So the first form we're going to do, it's going to be a Google form, sort of like the survey that you got this evening, and that's going to be volunteer contact information form, and that's just basically all about you, your first name, your street address, state house district, and your Senate district. And again, that's basically what Ken was talking about. That way we can decipher who should work with who, what legislatures they should go and see. Can you go to the next slide, please? This is that I couldn't fit the whole survey on one page, so this is just the continuation of that slide. We're going to ask you who you might want to be paired with. Maybe you have a neighbor that you've worked with before, and then if you have any specific legislators, like Ken said. Next slide. I'm zipping through this. So there are people who don't feel comfortable going online and filling out, online type surveys. And so what I did was I developed this, and you can print this and you can take this with you. You may need bigger fields, but this was just my first attempt. And you can take it with you, take 4 or 5 of them with you when you go to visit with the legislators, or if you're making a phone call. And then you can fill it out, and you can send it to me, and I will manually input it into the computer, into the survey. Next slide, please. And this is what we get for when you put in your information. It automatically, when I put it into the Google form, it automatically populates into this spreadsheet. So Ken was the only one who, when we made this PowerPoint presentation, was the only one who had answered. And at that time, I didn't have first name and last name split. We've decided to do that so that we can sort it in a better way. But you'll see that that's what we'll get from the input that you put on the contact form. You only need to answer this one time, because your contact information will be your contact information all the time. So you only need to fill out the contact information form one time. Next slide. The next slide, the next report is going to be the legislator contact report. And that's going to be a little bit more labor intensive, because you may make phone calls that we're going to want to hear about. You may have visits we want to hear about. You may have appointments that you have made that we want to hear about. It is going to be a lot of extra work, but we do need to know that information so that we can sort and arrange and have our efforts be the best possible way we can get the information as we need it. Next slide. Just like with the contact information form, this is a Google form again, first name, last name, email, phone. Next slide. The name of the legislator so fill out one of these for each legislative attempt that you make. So the name of the legislator that you were trying to get in touch with, did you have success, or was it just an attempt? And give us some feedback on what happened. Like Ken and Julie were saying before, did they say yay? Did they say nay? Did they have more questions? You can put that in there, and that way we can sort it and decide what our next step should be. Do you have plans for another visit or another phone call? And if so, please put that in there, because like Ken said, if he's available, he will go with you. Next slide, please. And just like with the contact information form, although you'll have to fill this out more often, this is the feedback that you can fill in at the time you are actually doing the appointment or the phone call, and then send it to me. If you don't want to do the online form, I would love it if you would do the online form. But if you feel uncomfortable doing that, or it just really turned out to be more work than you have time for, then I'm happy to as long as you have good writing and I can read your writing, I'm more than happy to put it in manually. Next slide. This is another opportunity. My husband Dave went to the legislature before we even attempted this PowerPoint or these ideas. And being Dave as he is, he came home and he made notes. And these are the notes that he made, and he sent them to me. And if you show me the next slide, this is what they turned into. So the first entry is Ken's entry on the Google form. The grayed out area is the input that I did manually of that email that Dave had sent to me. So again, my first preference would be for people to fill out the survey or the legislative contact form. But if that's just impossible for you to do, we don't want to not get the information. So you can send it to me and I will manually input it. Next slide. That's really basically it. I think that what we're going to find is that as we play with this, we may have, fewer questions, more questions. We may change, even the process. But until we start to use it, we're not going to know if it works or how well it works. And so I'd appreciate it if you just give us the information and then we can move on from there. Next slide. I think I'm done.
Yep. So listen, thank you everybody for staying over. To be clear about the next steps, actually Dave did a great thing. He put the contact form that we were going to email right in the chat. So the volunteer contact form, either the handwritten or the online form, you can go ahead and start that now. Please fill that out. That's in addition to what Michael Beach asked you for, because that gives us more information about your districts and so on. We will also then email to you, where we will then, once we have all the volunteer contact forms in, we're going to email you the slides. We're going to email you the handouts. We will let you know as soon as we have a day chosen for Lobby Day. You will get another Fair Districts newsletter. We think we should have that day chosen within sometime mid this week. It's already Tuesday. We're hoping to get that room nailed down. As soon as we get the room, we'll let you know what day we're going to all be there for that one Lobby Day. That'll be a whole nother event where we do our traditional work on the rope line and kind of try to cover all legislators. But in the meantime, or on that day, you'll be doing your meetings. I'll be doing some meetings as well. And so we hope to cover the committee, blanket the committees at least, and your legislators with this information. So again, you'll be getting some emails. You'll know your committee assignments pretty soon, and we'll go from there. And again, Joyce and Dave, thank you very much for offering your contact info. There's a question here from Leslie. If we're in a meeting with legislature, can we raise other related issues like voting rights, access, or prefer the only discuss redistricting? Leslie, I think if you get a definitive answer or a positive answer on our proposal on mid-decade, feel free to go on from there. But I wouldn't want to let the legislature defer that conversation and then try to hit them with something else. I think you got to focus on trying to get to an outcome of that encounter, right? Know that they're either, they're in or they're not in. We need like a definitive answer. Obviously, you want to try to persuade them to sign, right? That's really what your objective is. And then I think if you have extra time and you've gotten a good outcome of that, have another conversation. I don't have any problem with that, to be honest with you. Just keep in mind the way I would frame any other voting rights conversation is, look, it's all part of the same problem. Free, fair, and secure elections. That's our goal. Everybody wants that. Everybody in the state of Georgia would say, of course we want free, fair, and secure elections, right? So to me, bundling some of those conversations under one meeting is fine, but we absolutely want we're really counting on you to try to get to a definitive yes with every one of these folks that you're going to meet with. Okay. I think that's all we have for tonight, unless there's any other questions that you all have. Again, I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this effort. Michael Beach, do you think you have all your contact forms in? Your not contact forms, your
Yes, everybody's put it in that wants to.
Great. So we will use that information in the next day or so to figure out who wants to do what. And then again, next step is to fill out Joyce's and Dave's form, the volunteer contact form. That'll give us your district numbers and stuff. Emails will be coming. Okay? Thank you very much. If I can ask the core team to just stay for just a second afterwards, but thank you very much all for joining the meeting tonight. Appreciate your help.